Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Family Sedan channel, and what I'm sharing with you in this video is a notable step in the boldness and the arrogance of Kim Gensler and the way that he is attacking the cryptocurrency asset class. So there's a tweet that was shared by Bitcoin News, and attorney John Deaton retweeted it. The tweet from Bitcoin News, the Twitter account, wrote as follows from just earlier today. Breaking. Gary Gensler says, quote, everything other than Bitcoin, end quote, can be considered a security in his latest interview with NYMag. Now, what have we been screaming from the rooftops collectively as an XRP community for over 2 years? Especially, and I'll tell you, John Deaton was the first one to any sort of notable way warn about this over 2 freaking years ago. The way the SEC is approaching everything as though everything that is crypto, with the apparent exception of Bitcoin, everything is a security. And so if you, even if you're an Ethereum maxi, for example, and you were gleeful about XRP holders being harmed and Ripple being attacked, if you really thought that the SEC would never come for you, that might be a bit short-sighted. Because what we're seeing is this transformation in the way that Kim Gensler has been approaching crypto. You may recall that when he became SEC chair, how long has it been? I guess a couple of years almost. He would initially say when asked, okay, which cryptocurrencies are securities? And of course he'd say, well, it's very clear what is and isn't, but then he'd never specify. He wouldn't even specify anything about Bitcoin or Ethereum, the 2 cryptocurrencies, the only 2 on the planet that were perceived to have protection from the SEC. Not actual protection, but perceived to have protection that just isn't real. He wouldn't even speak on those 2 specifically. But then in more recent times, I can't remember when he changed his approach, but whether it was 6 months or a year ago, Kim Gensler began stating that his personal belief, not the SEC's official position, but he started sharing his belief that Bitcoin's not a security. But when asked, even at that point, okay, what about the rest of these cryptocurrencies? Well, I'm not going to get into the specifics of any additional cryptocurrencies, but now he's so bold that he'll just say it. Everything that, this is his belief, and I'm going to show you the specifics. Everything that's not Bitcoin is a security. This is what we've been warned. And by the way, the reason Bitcoin isn't a security is because he doesn't know who to sue because he doesn't know who made it. That's pretty much it, so far as I can tell anyway. But before going further, I do want to be clear. I do not have a legal or financial background of any kind. I am not offering legal or financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. And by the way, I'm going to highlight this in this video too. What the SEC is doing in pulling up crap from their rear side and just handing it over to the judge, what they're doing is, from a technical perspective, is they're testing a novel theory. Now, I'll acknowledge that the SEC is allowed to try novel theories, but I do not believe that they are arguing that they believe what they're arguing. They're trying new crap and seeing if it will stick. It goes against case precedent on anything securities dating back to 1946 with the SEC versus W.J. Howico Supreme Court case. That's how far back it goes. They're just throwing away over 70 years of case precedent because they want to take over and destroy crypto. It's a jurisdictional land grab. That's why they're doing what they're doing. And so again, they're entitled to try novel theories, but it's complete and utter garbage, and they deserve to fail. So upon this news breaking earlier today, Attorney John Deaton shared it, and here's what Attorney John Deaton had to say, and then I'll get into some of the specifics about what Kim Gensler was saying. Attorney Deaton wrote, a year and a half ago, I did a video for crypto law, and I said, the allegations being made in the Ripple case regarding XRP could be applied to almost every altcoin, including ETH. Ether proponents scoffed and said, but the SEC said ETH isn't a security. I pointed out that officials like Hinman, Hester Peirce, even the chairman, always give the disclaimer that the speech is only a personal opinion for a reason. I said the SEC could easily distinguish Hinman's speech, so we must fight the grossly overbroad allegations versus XRP. But people wanted to believe that the SEC's overreach was a Ripple/XRP only issue. That's why the divide and conquer approach is so effective. The SEC's unconstitutional overreach can never be celebrated or encouraged just because you dislike the target of the overreach. Yeah, so I'll pause to note here. While I acknowledge that the SEC in a general sense is allowed to try novel theories, what they're doing with the way they're pushing this novel theory, which I'm going to get to in a minute, that is outside of what they are allowed to do via the powers that have been handed to them by Congress. So Attorney Deaton is correct. Both things are true. And then Attorney Deaton says, after writing again, that's why the divide and conquer approach is so effective. The SEC's unconstitutional overreach can never be celebrated or encouraged just because you dislike the target of the overreach. Soon after encouraging the overreach, you may find yourself defending against the same overreach. And that's absolutely true. I'm not worried just about my XRP. I'm worried about all of the cryptocurrencies that I hold. Even a little bit Bitcoin, because you never know if something's going to be wacky and they'll go after like miners or this or that. You could see some weird stuff happen. I'm not particularly worried about Bitcoin, to be honest, but I'm worried about every other coin that I hold. The SEC trying to ruin the financial opportunity, like the greatest financial opportunity that's existed in the history of our species. This is what we're living through right now. This is what he's trying to destroy. He wants to take this from you. And so there was this from New York Mag titled, "Can Gary Gensler Survive Crypto Winter? DC's Top Financial Cop on Bankman-Fried Blowback." And I'm not going to focus on that portion, anything having to do with SBF on this. I want to get to let's just get to the guts of it. The most relevant portion, that's all I'm going to share from this article, which I think starts right here. There's 3 paragraphs. So let me just run through it. It's what's on your screen right now. And so the article reads as follows. The new Congress is looking again at crypto-specific legislation, but Gensler believes that the SEC has all of the legal tools that it needs. Over the course of our discussion, he articulated a straightforward view of the agency's reach. That's pretty much every sort of crypto transaction already falls under the SEC's jurisdiction, except spot transactions in Bitcoin itself and the actual purchase or sale of goods or services with cryptocurrencies. Folks, so the author of this article literally had to sit down with Kim Jong-Gensler, and he's saying, yeah, Kim Jong-Gensler told me that, everything's not Bitcoin. In fact, this is a quote from Gensler now. Everything other than Bitcoin, Gensler told me, and he said, quote, "You can find a website, you can find a group of entrepreneurs. They might set up their legal entities in a tax haven offshore. They might have a foundation. They might lawyer it up to try to arbitrage and make it hard jurisdictionally or so forth." End quote. Piece continues, "In other words, there are people behind these cryptocurrencies using a variety of complex and legally opaque mechanisms, but at the most basic level, they are trying to promote their tokens and entice investors. Bitcoin, because of its unique history and creation story, is fundamentally different from other crypto projects in this respect." Okay, so let me pause right there. If there's something that has happened in the creation, the history, anything that it makes Bitcoin what it is, if it was able to go down this path and not be a security, not result in illegal security transactions, if it was done once, clearly it can be done again. But how? Now, of course, Kim Jong-Gensler doesn't want to talk about that because he's making up crap, and the SEC's trying these novel theories, which are BS and outside of what is congressionally allowed in terms of, what once it goes through court. Should a judge find that, yes, of course, this is congressionally what was allowed? Well, no, of course they shouldn't. They should be able to try novel theories, but the court's got to smack them down. The court has to absolutely smack them, and especially in a case like this, because you can try novel theories that are outside the scope of what Congress allows or inside the scope. This is outside the scope of what Congress allows. But the idea that there's a path forward for Bitcoin, but it could never be replicated in any way whatsoever, is completely absurd. Show me the parameters that were set with Bitcoin that you, Kim Jong-Gensler, have deemed resulting in it never being a security. How do we duplicate that? How can that happen yet again? Of course, the reality is, and we all know this, it's that he, Kim Jong-Gensler, he doesn't know who to sue. And in theory, fine, he could go after miners, and maybe that does happen. I hope that does. That would be so absurd. But I think he understands that would be a much more difficult fight when there's all this other low-hanging fruit. So I don't find that to be the most probable approach, and it looks like he's already thrown in the towel, and since he's the guy at the top and he says this is his personal opinion, not likely to see the SEC directionally go after Bitcoin. So I don't think that's probable, at least not while Kim Jong-Gensler is in charge. And then the piece also reads as follows. That's the last part I wanted to cover of this. And then we got to get to the next part, which just illustrates how absurd it is. And this is where we get into this whole idea of what this novel theory is and how outrageous it is. But first, let me cover this little part here. They might drop their tokens overseas at first and contend or pretend that it's going to take 6 months before they come back to the US, he continues. That's Gensler. But at the core, he argued, these tokens are, and this is a quote, these tokens are securities because there's a group in the middle and the public is anticipating profits based on that group, end quote. So pause. He said the tokens themselves are securities, not the special circumstances surrounding it. He knows the difference, but he's saying the tokens are securities. Then the article reads as follows. The claim that crypto investors are hoping to profit based on the efforts of those intermediaries in much the same way that stockholders in public companies hope to see their investments appreciate over time is central to Gensler's position that, as a legal matter, these are actually transactions and securities that fall within the SEC's jurisdiction. Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, as Attorney Deaton has said many times, if you were citing specific transactions that make up some sort of scheme that's limited specifically to Ripple, but isn't all things XRP forever in the future with no input, that would be different than Attorney Deaton has publicly stated. He wouldn't have even sought to intervene in any capacity in the SEC v. Ripple case, but the SEC is engaging in tremendous overreach. There was a short clip shared by my fellow XRP YouTuber, the digital asset investor, and he shared the portion here including Attorney Lewis Cohen. Now, Attorney Lewis Cohen, he actually wrote with a few other people this incredible document that's on your screen right now, The Ineluctable Modality of Securities Law, Why Fungible Crypto Assets Are Not Securities. This bitch is 180 pages. This is the real deal. This is, and I've cited this before, but this goes back and shows all of the case law dating back to 1946 and shows that it's never the asset itself that is the security, just as a matter of case law, which is clearly demonstrates the SEC, they're far out of their lane. They're completely outrageously out of their lane, and they're engaging in this ridiculous novel theory called the embodiment theory. Now, what's good is that this monster document here, this 180-page document, which is just like an incredible homework assignment done, was handed into the lap of Judge Torres in the SEC v. Ripple case, who is going to determine the winner and losers, winner and loser in the SEC v. Ripple case. And it's just astonishing in going through this, the amount of detail and effort that they put into this. But Lewis Cohen wrote on behalf of, I think it was for Paradigm, if I'm not mistaken anyway, one of the amicus participants in the SEC v. Ripple case, and this was one of the attachments for what was written. And so he was talking about this in this little clip here. He was talking about the embodiment theory. And I'll come back. I want to share with you what Attorney Deaton had to say first, but I'll show you some specifics from what was written in that document. So you can see what Judge Torres is going to be looking at. And I think anybody who doesn't have a dog in this fight, and if you have at least half a brain, upon reading through this, you will see quite quickly that the SEC they're far outside of their lane. And that's me putting it as nicely as possible, because I think they're rat bastards. So anyway, this clip was shared by Attorney John Deaton, and he tagged Lewis Cohen at NY Crypto Lawyer. And John Deaton said, Lewis Cohen coined, appropriately so, the SEC's theory in the Ripple case as the embodiment theory. When I filed the writ of mandamus filed by a motion to intervene, it forced the SEC to admit that it couldn't argue the XRP token itself is a security per se. Yeah, so I'll pause and note part of what was included in this clip, this 2-minute and 43-second clip shared by DAI, was he was talking about the pushback that the SEC gave to John Deaton when he was initially seeking to intervene in the SEC v. Ripple case. And they even, one of the things that they said was, hey, we're not claiming, I'm paraphrasing here, but hey, we're not claiming the XRP itself is a security. But then if you look at the arguments that they're making, the arguments are such that they are arguing that it effectively is. And so then Attorney Deaton says, the SEC then stated that it wasn't arguing the token itself as a security, but that instead, quote, the XRP traded even in the secondary market is the embodiment of those facts, circumstances, promises, and expectations, and today represents that investment contract, end quote. I call it the SEC's legal gibberish theory, but I can see Lewis's embodiment theory is more appropriate for legal analysis. As Lewis points out in the video and in his extensive article, the SEC offers no precedent or support for its novel embodiment theory. Yeah, so that's another thing that Lewis pointed out. When the SEC was talking about XRP being the embodiment of these illegal securities transactions, he noted that there was no footnote there citing where they got that from any sort of existing case law. And they did have those types of little footnotes and explaining where they were deriving their perspectives based on existing case law. But when it came to this novel theory, which is at the core of what's being argued, they had nothing because they literally made it up. And Lewis Cohen points that out. And so then Attorney Deaton says, they offered no support because none exists. That's right, folks. Let's pause again. They literally didn't offer any support in their document sent to Judge Torres because there is no support. You don't just oops-a-doodle forget to include that. They include case law everywhere that they can, but they can't here. They're just trying stuff. And it's no harm to them. It's harm to everybody else that's participating in the ecosystem, including XRP holders. And then Attorney Deaton says, it's a made-up theory to try and get around the fact that they are claiming all XRP, including XRP traded in the secondary market, are securities. Think about the argument. They claim that they are not asserting the token itself as a security, but that the token represents or embodies the security. It's the functional equivalent of saying the token itself is a security. Spot on, Attorney Deaton. Spot on. It's the same damn thing because they know in court they can't say the token itself is because that's a losing argument. So then they just argue that it effectively is anyway by saying it embodies those things. And that somehow that slippery little crap argument is going to get them out of the grip of any sort of level-headed judge. Oh, it better not, because this is a garbage theory that's never been tested in the history of our entire country. And then Attorney Deaton says, as I said in my amicus brief, quote, the SEC's theory is the equivalent of arguing individual oranges were not only oranges, but also represented the investment contract with the W.J. Howey Company. The SEC's theory would be a bit amusing if innocent holders weren't being severely harmed, end quote. Yeah, can you imagine that being the case? Just compare, just apply the same argument to W.J. Howey Co. with the oranges. So the orange itself, even if not a security, it's the embodiment of that. Well, let me tell you this. That was not in the Supreme Court verdict in 1946. There's nothing about the orange being the embodiment of the security. There's nothing in there even close to that. And so then if you go back to this, the ineluctable modality of securities law, why fungible crypto assets are not securities. Well, let me show you why I'm in just a small part of this, because again, this thing's 180 pages. Let me show you a small part of why I'm so happy that this work was done. They just did this, and it was on behalf of an amicus party. And I believe it was Paradigm. And the judge has this. So check this out. Part of what they wrote, this is the part I'm going to cover here. It's about the embodiment theory. And this is a quote. Embodiment theory would effectively treat crypto assets as securities on a temporary basis. That is, the crypto asset is a security, but only for so long as it is deemed to embody the original investment scheme. However, this position requires one to accept that, like the mythical Proteus, Homer's Old Man of the Sea in the Odyssey, a crypto asset can transform or morph out of being a security and maybe back again, based solely on events extrinsic to the asset itself. This has led to well-mentioned but mistaken efforts on the part of numerous market participants to divine the moment when a crypto asset has morphed from a security to a non-security, end quote. Yeah, and Bill Hinman's speech did nothing to help that. So a couple of things. As far as this being, in theory, like even on a temporary basis, that's the only part where I didn't even take any issue whatsoever with this. Just it's a little issue because the SEC, if you look at everything that they've written, and I have, there is nothing in there that says it is a security until such conditions are met or until such amount of time elapses. Nothing of the sort. Nothing of the sort. It's not a temporary basis. It's forever. It's forever, folks. So that's gross in and of itself. But yeah, as far as this idea of it morphing in and out of securities, this is something that even I, like, if you go back to, right after the SEC v. Ripple case, hit, which was absolutely shocking, I knew nothing. I knew very little compared to what I know now. Let's just say that. I know way more about securities law than I ever thought I would. Because why would a non-lawyer like myself, or most of you out there aren't lawyers, I know that. So like, why would we know this stuff? But this also is honestly one of those things where I was like, and this is an incorrect way of wording things, but yeah, it's not the idea of the cryptocurrency, morphing from becoming a security to a non-security. And I used to actually word things like that, struggling to get an idea across as just, a simple regular dude all up on the internet making YouTube channels. or making YouTube videos on on my channel. It's not the case that the asset itself is morphing in and out of being a security potentially. It's more so about the parties within select a scheme effectively. How is it being treated? Okay, and it could be those transactions specifically that are infringing, but it's not the asset itself. And so it's not that there are. I mean, it could be the case. So like there could even be parties that have transactions that are infringing. There could be separate transactions that aren't, and then after that, there could be additional transactions that are. But that has nothing to do with the security itself. And so that's something that if you go back to the beginning of this thing, I think barely anybody understood that. I know I did not understand that. I had yet to learn that. And I think most people didn't know that. But now we do know that. And so understanding all of this and then going back and seeing what the SEC asshat pricks of these attorneys, what they've been arguing for 2 years with not an ounce of respect for anybody that holds XRP or what it might financially mean to them. They don't care. They just want to wreck it all. It's just repulsive. It really, truly is. So anyway, I'm thankful for everybody that is pushing back, and I'm just trying to do my part to at least get the word out, and share the thoughts that I have and what I learn along the way. But the true fighters are people like Attorney John Deaton. Attorney Jeremy Hogan has done so much because he's a real lawyer. I just play one on the YouTubes, and then Lewis Cohen and many others. So we'll see what happens here. But look, we've been warning for years now. It's not just XRP holders that are going to get screwed if things don't go well in the SEC v. Ripple case. It's everything that's not Bitcoin. And Gary Gensler is so bold and he's so arrogant, he's not even afraid to hide that that's his perspective anymore. He's literally screaming it from the rooftops for the first time I've ever seen in this brand new interview, which is covered from New York Meg. Okay. Wow, he's not even trying to hide his nonsense approach at this point. He used to at least try and dance around like, well, I don't think about that. No, he's just full on out there now. He just doesn't even give a damn. Wow. Really grinds my gears, folks. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the Moon Family Sedan.